American monster movies are popular almost everywhere in the world. Tonight, your guide for this rare odyssey is the rising star of horror, a real little terror. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Chucky!
It's showtime.
Where the hell's Andy?
Did you miss me, Andy?
Andy, snap out of it! You act like you've never seen a dead body before.
I never saw a doll like you before.
Amazing, isn't it? I don't have a problem with killing.
Chucky did it.
What are you talking about?
Just stay away from that doll!
It's just a doll.
Prove that it's just a doll. Say something, damn it!
How's it hanging, Phil?
Presto. You're dead.
You're dead.
No, you are.
No, you're dead. We killed you.
You just can't keep a good guy down.
I am Chucky, the killer doll, and I dig it.
So can you take me back to the beginning of when all of this started?
You know, I was a horror fan all my life. I wrote the first script when I was a student at UCLA. You know, I was really inspired by the horror movies that I grew up on as a kid. I especially loved Brian De Palma movies like Carrie and Dressed to Kill and The Fury. So I gravitated to writing because it was cheaper. You know, so it's just the cost of paper. And in those days, a typewriter. This was like before computers. Can you believe it? Yeah.
For a while there in the early 80s, every weekend a new slasher movie was opening up. It was just such a flood of them.
When the first Nightmare on Elm Street came out, and it was in 1984, it was very unusual to have a hero be a villain like Freddy Krueger, who was disfigured and evil. It was a new kind of horror figure. It was a relatable horror figure. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't somebody grunting and groaning and coming and breaking in. He was a guy, and he had an attitude. He liked you, you know, he sort of made you feel special. And there was something about those elements that draws the audience in.
You know, that was back in the time when the killers in movies had personalities, you know what I mean? They became like the hero, but there was like a shapeshifter because it was also the comic relief.
The sense of humor is huge. The fact that he had humor to his malice.
That's back when Freddy Krueger was like, welcome to prime time, bitch. And so those kind of characters, you know, found themselves as really the staple of the movie. It wasn't about the teenage kids, and it wasn't about the heroine. Those movies were about the villain.
It paved the way for other anti-heroes who you hated and were afraid of, but you also were attracted to them. And it did, it paved the way for a Chucky.
Well, what happened was, my wife and I, Liz, had been in England, in London, and I bought a book called The Victorian Dollhouse Murders, because the idea of dolls coming to life scared me to death when I was a little kid, talking Tina from Twilight Zone. And when I came back, I gave her the book and I said, I would love to do something with dolls. And she said, well, there actually was this screenplay that came out about 6 months ago called Blood Buddy, but it had been passed on by the studios. I said, I'm curious to read it. I had done an American Tale for my next project. I wanted to do something scary. And she gave it to me, and I really liked the overall idea of it. A great idea, Don's concept of a doll that is programmed by Madison Avenue to come to life.
On Madison Avenue, they refer to children as consumer trainees. It's like training children to want things that they don't need and become compulsive buyers. And then in the midst of the 80s, and Cabbage Patch dolls had just come out. They were this huge craze. And I realized that the whole living doll trope in the horror genre, I had seen Talkie Tina on The Twilight Zone, I had seen Magic with Anthony Hopkins, but I realized that no one had ever done the living doll thing as a full-fledged feature where you treat the doll as a character who can actually emote and you can give him pages of dialogue. And Gremlins had just come out. So it's like with Gremlins, I realized that animatronic effects had gotten to a point where they were sophisticated enough that the puppets could actually emote. So sort of all these ideas came together and out came the first Chucky script.
The veteran slashers like Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers were getting a little tired by then.
Don came to my office and we met, and I got the rights to the script.
He had at the time a deal at Disney, and so he had an office on the Disney lot. I'm like 20 or 21, so it was a really big deal to have someone who was established and had done such big work take an interest in what I had written and support it and get it going.
The slasher genre was ready for a burst of new blood, and Chucky supplied that in spades in 1988 with the release of Child's Play.
And did some work on my own on some ideas for it, because there wasn't the Frankenstein moment in it. There wasn't the moment that brought the creature to life. He was a doll that had blood in him, not real blood, but you could be its blood buddy. I felt very strongly there should be something very different about this. And so the story starts off in the original with a murderer, Brad Dourif, running through the streets, and the police are chasing him, and he takes refuge in a toy store.
And he's shot by a police detective, but before he dies, he does this arcane voodoo ritual that takes his spirit and puts it into this inanimate doll.
That's really what brought the creature to life. The name was very important. In Don's script, it was Buddy. For me, the men that truly haunted my childhood were James Earl Ray, who shot Martin Luther King, Lee Harvey Oswald, and Charles Manson. So Charles Lee Ray are all three of those names. And I don't know if you know that. Yeah. And from there, his friends called him Chucky.
Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end. Heidi-ho.
We follow young Andy Barkley, who's a lonely kid living with a single mom, and he wants a Good Guys doll because it's the rage in toys that year. And Andy's mom buys that doll for Andy, and pretty soon Andy has a new best friend, but it's not the kind of best friend that you want. It's more of his worst friend.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
For my presentation, what I'd done are sketches of what I thought Chucky would look like, I mean, in fierce form. You know, they all have kind of like jumpers or overalls. What I did was I took elements of childhood implements, like a little kid's baseball bat, things that are overall innocuous to murder. That kind of became an important signature piece for him, for that clothing and the colors that go with that. The My Buddy doll that Don spoke of had red hair.
In fairy tales, the archetype of some, redhead's evil. And that's partly why Chucky has red hair. I mean, it's silly and ridiculous. And of course we know redheads are the nicest people in the world, but in fairy tales, they are harbingers of evil.
The more important part was turning this kind of benign doll that could be seen on the shelf at Toys R Us or something, and what it would look like when the monster came out.
I said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch, you filthy slut!
In those shots, he kind of changed from the mop-haired guy to a bit of a receding hairline. A lot of Jack Nicholson, honestly, was my inspiration from The Shining, for that face.
I can't think of a thing to say. Fuck it.
Chucky's very famous.
Chucky's so famous. Chucky's the most famous thing you've done, right?
Yeah, but I'm nowhere near
the star Chucky is.
I was, a huge fan of his, even just starting as a kid, growing up, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I was a freshman at Columbia University, 18 years old, and he was teaching an acting class there, and I audited the acting class. And then he coincidentally ended up playing this character that I created. I didn't cast him. Tom Holland, who was the director of the first movie, cast Brad.
What was it like to switch from, acting to voice acting?
It's the same thing, really. You get innately into how to work with a microphone. After a while, you just kind of fall into